Welcome to the Chief Healthcare Officer podcast show. It's a great pleasure meeting with you all, where we dive into the healthcare leadership subjects, global trends, and then so many different issues with my guests, who are my friends, and then who are the people in my network. It's always a pleasure to meet with these great people, learn from them, and discuss further details together, how the healthcare is and how the healthcare is going to evolve in future. So today I have another great guest, João Bocas. So Joe is with me, and then we will be discussing several things. But just before we dive into the discussion, I just want him to introduce himself. And again, thanks for joining me today.
Sure, fantastic. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite. Lovely to see you as always, my friend, Dr. Fatih. Pleasure to be here. So, my name is João Bocas. I'm CEO of Digital Salutem, also digital health influencer and a wearables expert.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, you have variety of experience, and you have been, giving speeches in so many events. And we had a meeting in London, we had a meeting in Dubai, and each meeting, I learned so many things from you. I mean, the wearable part is really very deep and getting deeper. So let's start with this point. How did you end up with the wearables, Joe? Can you please explain us what has happened earlier and how did you end up with these great subjects?
Yes, sure. Well, I always say I have two passions, sport and health. Sometimes they go hand in hand. Also, the behavior is very similar to achieve great things in terms of performance, well-being. But to cut the story short, I've been a sports fanatic since I was a young child, and I came to UK and I graduated with a sports degree, and I work as a football coach, as a fitness trainer in the sports industry for a long time. And then I transitioned to corporate wellness, and I was starting to do corporate work in London, well-being programs, advice on employee engagement, employee well-being, stress management, all these subjects. And back then, the pedometers, this was a long time ago. The, there were no fitness bands. I mean, the first Fitbit only came out in 2011. Yeah. Back then, it was the pedometers, that single digit devices that you wear on your waistline. So I was fascinated by that because I was always in a kind of performance and well-being state. And I started working in corporate wellness, and then I gathered a great interest in devices with my personal life, but also the link to my work. And then back then, I started to follow the Fitbits and the Garmins of the world, and because I was always a sporty person, I have a great interest in sport. I was running marathons and doing triathlons and doing a number of things and test wearables for my well-being, but also my performance. So that's how I kind of started to really engage with wearables quite a long time ago.
Great story, Joe. I'm just thinking. I mean, how I ended up, or when I had my first wearable. I think we all have started with the step meters somehow, right? I mean, it's even difficult to consider them. I remember, I mean, in my clinic in 2004-5, we were even giving to the patients. For some patients, there was a national program, and then they were just putting this in their belt at that time. I mean, no one had such smartphones and the other thing. And then they were bringing us later on, and we were just counting, and then we were trying to understand. And I was advising especially the patients with the diabetes risk or the patients with the diabetes to count, and we were just advising them you should walk more and then do the other things. Just before, again, I mean, I'm sure we will have lovely things to discuss. Let's identify the wearables. What is wearable? I mean, you just said that the wristband. We are nowadays seeing the rings, and then I have seen the chest band for the respiratory things, and there are so many other things. Can you just tell us what do you mean with wearables, and how many kind of wearables we have today in use for the patients and for professional use.
Yeah, sure. I consider wearable any um, technology that enables a usage that can be embedded in a body or all or a device. So and we have seen a great progression because before was all even a smartphone we can consider wearable, but we don't see a smartphone as a wearable because it's in a different category. But the more traditionalistic wearables are the smartwatches, and they evolved over time. But then we have seen from smart bracelets without a screen now, with the likes of Whoop and other competitors now coming out. And then we have smart rings, we have the earpods now, we have hearings, we have smart belts, smart shoes. So, I mean, the range of wearables is astonishing now. You mentioned also the straps that um, also smart patches. Now we have e-skin, kind of e-skin tattoos. I mean, there are so many variants and different kinds of wearables. And now we even have the smart glasses. When Google came out with the smart glasses for medical purposes, they failed in a way because they were quite expensive and they were restricted only a very niche group of professionals could use them. But now we have the smart meta glasses. I mean, for more wider adoption and mass adoption, if you like. So we're seeing all these. Um, I think is an evolution, but also is natural. And to round up one category that I kind of forgot is smart clothing. I was actually talking to a manufacturer of wearables because wearables is all about the technology, about the sensors, about the deployment, and the sensors can go more or less anywhere now. They don't have to be on your wrist, on your watch.
True, true.
So
True.
so
Well, I
yeah.
mean, I think it is variety, and then we are seeing more and more. But then I want to start the discussion in a way that earlier, when we have seen the first Apple Watch, and then the Apple Health, especially, the expectations were much, much faster adoption, and then some additional, let's say, clinical outcomes, because we have seen the respiratory results, the cardiac results, the pulse meters, and then the others. The oximeter somehow came to the wrist. Then we were expecting the blood pressure results, and recently I have seen that even the smartwatch was only able to alert if in case we have a high blood pressure. And the other, I mean, the available equipment or devices in the technology shop in our district I mean, I was expecting to have much more increase, a new variety of products and the others. Somehow it slowed down, and nowadays, after the AI, this kind of hoop things and new solutions, I can see another actually spike. Why did this happen in that way? I mean, how is the industry moving? Because you're following very close. Tell us more what happened in the past and how you see the current trends.
Yeah, that's a very good point because I think, like anything else, I gave that example about the Google glasses. There was not the right time, not the right product at that time, and definitely not the right time. That proved to be true. And I've seen the evolution with wearables. And if I'm honest, Dr. Fatih, I've been frustrated for quite some time because for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, very little happened. Of course, the fitness and sporting industry are embedded the consumer wearables, yeah, and the consumer health wearables have been here for a long time. The likes of Fitbit have been there since 2011. But the progression into the medical field and the progression into our industry, which is healthcare, has been very slow, non-existent for some reasons, because of regulation, because of the cost, because of I love wearables, but wearables bring another layer of complexity. Then also, where is the benchmark? Because very few people have been doing things with wearables, there is no industry benchmark. What is a good use case? What is good quality? What about the issues with accuracy? Can we actually use wearables in the medical field because they have discrepancies? We can't rely on the data. All these things. But I was doing articles in 2019, 2020. This is the year of wearables, 2017, 2018. I stopped doing the articles at the beginning in January because I started, well, but to round up my line of thought, um, now, like everything else, the wearables are maturing. Like AI, we talk about AI for quite a long time. Talk about AI for 10 years, and all of a sudden AI just exploded and is a reality. And actually, we need to use AI, otherwise we're left behind. I see a similar connotation with wearables. We've been talking about wearables for 8, 9, 10 years. All of a sudden, I see that the uptake is greater. People are more interested in their health for many, many factors. Longevity is a big trend now. I believe wearables can play a very big role there. And of course, our industry is demanding solutions, is asking for answers. And I believe wearables can play a part in there. They will not be the only answer, of course, and all these issues that I mentioned, but wearables are certainly have a lot of potential and a lot to give.
I mean, as a physician, wearable for me is a magic solution because I don't want our patients just to have the interaction with the clinician at the time when they visit the clinic or the hospital. We want to stay in touch with our patients. When we stay in touch with our patients, we cannot keep asking how they feel or the details from their body. The best way is to create the sensors and then create a model that we can monitor all these details. And I mean, in more professional manner, we created ICUs at home, and then with Philips, and then with the Mindray as well, we have the normal hospital degree screens, and then they have all their own extensions, and we connect them to the patient, and I can get the respiratory details, pulse oximetry details, cardiac details, even the ECG and everything directly flowing into our data center in the hospital, and I can follow. But this is very high level and huge investment. All what we were dreaming is to give some devices to our patients, especially the chronic disease patients, and we were actually dreaming to follow their details up to the, I mean, blood sugar, or up to, I mean, all kind of different parameters. But then I think, as you said, um, medical industry has so many regulations and other things, and acceptance and entrance to this field is not that easy. I think it is going to happen, but it will take some time. But just before, I mean, looking at the challenging part, can you tell us some successful stories, some success stories from the industry, um, for some certain diseases? Can you tell us some projects from the world, because you're following so many companies in the world and so many different devices? Tell us some success stories with the wearables for the specific clinical issues and some disease areas.
Mm. I see, for example, in cardiology, and I'm not a clinician or a medical professional, but in cardiology, I see great impact. I see some of the there are some wearables that bring the ECG 1 lead, 2 lead, up to 12 lead now, and have a great impact of treatment of arterial fibrillation, and also more on a preventative side. Because we all know that having a heart attack or a stroke can be catastrophic. So the wearables, that they have a great impact in terms of managing the condition, but perhaps have a preventative measure that when you are in danger, they give you an alert. So I see it. In other conditions, is a bit trickier to have success stories. For example, in oncology is more about the preventative side. The pharma industry has been trying very hard to, not just with wearables, but including wearables, to have some studies and some intervention around oncology, because cancer is big numbers, big money, but it's very tricky to actually treat cancer. So the wearables are not as impactful, but certainly in cardiology, there are great case studies out there, and many companies actually, including Apple. I love Apple. I have Apple computers and Apple phone, but sometimes I'm a bit critical of Apple because I would love to see Apple in the medical industry, because they have the devices that give medical grade, but then there is no, and this is where my critic is, in a nice way. I don't like to criticize the industry or the brands, but I would love to see Apple to bring more value to the industry, because they could also not just give them, not just give the readings, but then have actually support around it. Because what happens if you receive an alert that your heart rate is very, very high, or you're having a heart attack? If there's no one there with you, there is no support, there is no service attached to it. So I'd like Apple to construct a bit more about the medical industry and this great potential, seriously.
I'm in touch with couple people in the Apple management
Mm.
teams, and I asked them similar questions. But the Apple's management style and development style is different than how we expect. They work with large labs and then some research and development houses. They create the solutions, they bring it to Apple, then Apple gets through the compliance and then the other things, which takes quite a long time. Then they bring to the market. So I'm sure they're working on so many things, but I think it will take some time. I just want to ask you one thing. You just said that your wearable interest started from the sports. So what about the sports wearables? Can you tell us some samples that you have seen in the market, the athletes and then the others using? Because I'm sure this is more professional kind of wearables what they have.
Yeah, and yeah. Now the professionals, for example, in soccer, in football, now they're wearing the vests with a wearable that is like a kind of a tiny vest behind the underneath the shirt, the club shirt, and that's really groundbreaking, because now they can pinpoint um, distance covered, type of output in terms of effort, and then from that they can compare to a certain level of high performance. But from there they start to actually predict the risk of injury. They start to also work on recovery. So they're getting great insights. A long time ago was just about wearables. They measure, for example, just distance or just one output. Yeah. And now from those, there are a couple of brands, is Atlas, and there are a couple of brands in professional sport. Um, yeah, it's great. We go back to Whoop. There are other brands doing great things, not just Whoop, but Whoop also gives great readings in terms of the recovery stuff, because the recovery is very important in a professional sport. And now in professional sport, they try also to use sensors around muscle injury and other things, just to try to prevent injuries, because for a club, a professional injury is very costly, because the athlete will be out for 2-3 months. So
Indeed.
for them to prevent that, when they work at the maximum effort, they have the data for them to compare, for them to say, actually, there is a risk here. It's better rest this player this week, or this game, or this match. So they're getting great intelligence, and they can go to real detail now. The guesswork is out of the way. So now they get real data.
I'm not sure if we can consider this. Maybe it's on another professional device. We are now using the cordless halters in our hospital, and this is such a small device. You can just put it. Previously, I remember. We were putting the cores, 12 ED leads here, there, everywhere, and then We were trying to get the data out of it. This small device is just here, and it collects all the data without any other, I mean, electrodes and the other thing, and it makes the life easy. Patients, they love it, and it's not heavy as before. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, the Holter device was very heavy, and then we were having even a special belt for this one for people to carry this together with them for 24 hours. The development is mind blowing, and I'm sure the professional industries like the sports industry will bring more solutions. I'm also hearing some from the defense industry, from the soldiers. They're also trying to create something where they can follow these soldiers' activity and then the health and then the other things. Now, the question what I want to ask you, how do you see the future of wearables? Where is the industry moving? So, which area is the main interest area for the research and development at the moment?
The future, yeah. We are seeing a great development. I think we are at the very critical stage of the wearables evolution, if you like. I could say wearables 3.0 or even 4.0. Yeah, I could create in here. Maybe I should trademark that, Dr. Fatih. Wearables 4.0 by João Bocas. Yeah. But we see the smart rings, we see the sensors, we see e-skin, we see the smart glasses. We are seeing really a great development. I have a prediction that probably I said 5 years ago, but now I think is more real. Because everything takes time, right? It's like a decade, a delayed decade, yeah. But I have a prediction that in 5-10 years time, the the smartwatches and the wristbands will be obsolete, will be kind of non-existent, because or everything goes on your phone, or you can actually have a nice small band that you can have the watch of your preference. Because I love wearables, and I had this. I was actually talking to Polar, another great brand that we've been talking to, and they create a kind of whoop with no screen. Because if you want to wear a nice watch, maybe you don't want to wear the Apple Watch or the Garmin, or because you don't want to have two watches. Yeah. So wearables are also, the manufacturers are designing around that. But in terms of the evolution, I see wearables getting smaller, trendier. A big trend is fashion tech. Aura Ring just proved that with the gold rings, with the silver, and now with collars, with the ceramic collection. Other brands are following, but we now have other types of wearables. We have the earrings. There's a company now, a new startup, doing like everything, a lot of health data, but on your ear. Actually, they defend, I'm not a clinician, but defend the ear. That is a great point to collect health data.
I think Apple has started. I mean, with the last AirPod, they have some data collection from the earpod.
Right. Yeah. The earbuds are a great, yeah, is a great wearable for the future. Yeah, and the things that I mentioned, smart patches, smart rings, e-clothing. Maybe one day we don't even see us as a wearable. We see as an attachment to our shirt,
Exactly.
or
I mean, as you just said, the vest, maybe it will be on the cloth. So then, I mean, we expect something much smaller because sensors are getting very complex. I mean, I have been hearing from the friends coming from China, interesting kind of wearables and then sensors from their side too. So we're all excited, and I hope we can see more wearable options, which will be definitely, I mean, helpful for our clinical operations, because I want my patients to bring their wearable data, which will help us to understand the past instead of just now. So then we can make a better decision for their treatments, for their lifestyle. And then the other thing, as you just said, longevity became the buzzword. And we believe there will be so many things around that too. So in our podcast show, Joe, we always try to also touch to the healthcare leadership points. And then we want to understand how leaders actually can support the future development for such new devices, new inventions. What is your message to the healthcare leaders? What do you expect from the healthcare leaders running and managing all the care delivery operations today?
That's a very great question. I I will disclose, you know this, but I will disclose that I'm writing a book on wearables finally, and you encouraged me to do so. I thank you for that. And many leaders ask me, why don't you write a book? And for some reason, for many years I didn't. And also, um, maybe it was not the right time. But I'm writing a book on wearables, and I've done a lot of research around wearables. 6, 7, 8 years ago, I actually developed a health engagement report, and out of this report was a lot of fluff, but also I had uh, we had some real interviews face to face to people using your Fitbit. What is your body? Why don't you use it longer? We had real sense. So I created a benchmark around some of the main barriers. What I would say to the leaders is one thing: take a risk, and take a risk, it means investment, it means making mistakes, but the main point that I would say is to plan accordingly, because most of the time we think about, okay, we buy 1,000 wearables or 100 or whatever that is, and the technology is gonna be our solution. The technology is great, and technology is very mature now. As you know, the wearables are very well developed, but I would say identify the main related barriers. And when I've done this study, the 5 things that came out, we done a study for device related barriers and user related barriers. In the device related barriers, it came up the number one issue is interoperability, because we're bringing another solution, yeah, always going to communicate with the existing systems, and sometimes it might be one integration. Sometimes it's very difficult, especially if you have different systems and everything. Also, you might not think about that, but a battery issue is a really big barrier, because most of wearables are up to 7 days. What happens after that? We need to educate the patients and the users that, okay, it might seem very simple, but you must charge your Apple Watch, yeah, otherwise it runs out of battery. But we need to educate the patients, because no data, no value. Okay, so you mentioned one very interesting thing before that I was thinking when you mentioned the alter device. The wearables, they used to be very bulky and uncomfortable, big and comfortable. People do not like to wear them. They're not as sexy as you have today, a small ring. So that was a big barrier. Perhaps it's not a big barrier anymore, but the lack of personalization and the lack of support and guidance and direction, they're really an issue. If you do a project with wearables, make sure you consider all these things, because the engagement is crucial. Support people according from day one to the ongoing engagement. It's very important that touch base, send them messages, notifications, not every day, but how are they doing? Because that's very important. How many times I had my wearables, they run out of battery, they're on the top of my fridge, I'm not using them for a while. And it's like breaking your pattern when you go to the gym. When you stop doing, you find difficult to get back on track. With wearables is very simple, but it's very important. It's more around the behavior. Yeah. And some of the behavior, the user related behavior barriers are the lack of intrinsic motivation. Why is the user or the patient using the wearable? Okay, I'm using my wearable because I want to lose weight, for example, or I'm tracking my sleep, or actually I want to relax after work. Okay, great. The intrinsic motivation cannot be given. It's got to be from inside out from the patient. Most of the time in here, they will have a reason why they are using the wearables around a certain condition. But then
I
there
really
are
appreciate.
privacy,
I really
privacy issues, security. There are all these things to consider. People hear these stories. Oh, the
I
pharma, they're
think
going to sell my
these are
data.
great messages we want our leaders to think when they are going to implement any project with the wearables. and then the experience that you're sharing is amazing and very valuable. And you remember, I mean, we had one discussion about the project in Abu Dhabi with one Chinese company, and then they were also struggling because of such implementation issues.
Mm.
And I think it's not just about distributing the devices to the people; it's about explaining them. And always we say there's a human touch part. We need to explain a 70 years old person, look, using this has such benefits, and don't forget to charge it, and make sure that this is connected to your Wi-Fi. And for some people these are very technical things. I mean, for them even charging is a technical thing. Gosh, I mean, how will I make it all these? How will I follow? And that they want someone else actually at home or outside to come and support them to use this. But I mean, you're really touching to the great points. So, Joe, I really appreciate this great discussion. It was a great coverage for the wearables, and then I mean, I'm a firm believer of the wearables, and I'm sure we will have amazing wearables in coming years. Not that far, with the help of AI, I'm sure the development will get much faster, and hopefully we will be able to utilize them even in the clinic, and we will be able to monitor our patients with these small devices when they are not even in the hospital, and it will help also us to manage hospital for the real patients. So then there are so many things behind this development, and I'm sure technology and then our engineers are working very hard on that. Thank you so much for your time again. I really enjoyed the discussion. And if you have anything to add as the last point, we will be very happy to hear.
No, I'm very delighted that you invite me. I had this vision for quite a long time, and I want to share it with you. I believe wearables can change the world, and certainly the patient's world, the human health, and the human beings. We can really benefit from wearables.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Thank you so much again. Our followers and then the listeners from wherever you follow, thanks for your time again. We really appreciate your time listening to us. It was another actually great discussion. And tune in. There will be many other great guests, and we will cover many other great subjects. Thank you so much. Have a great day.